Columbia University canceled in-person classes through the end of the semester because of chaos from anti-Israel protesters and the threats of campus violence against Jewish American students. In fact, several universities have been forced to go hybrid or remote, with parents who now want their tuition money refunded. Lawmakers also want federal funding pulled from schools that allow this. So just how much taxpayer funding is at stake right now? Joining us this morning to break it all down is Adam Andrzejewski, CEO and founder of OpenTheBooks.com. Good morning to you, sir. These elite universities can't control public safety on their campuses, according to all these critics. So what's happening here, and just how much money are we talking about when it comes to our taxpayer dollars?
Well, I think the American taxpayer would be disturbed to know that we're funding these universities. As a matter of fact, Jan, the American taxpayer puts more into these elite universities like the Ivy League, Stanford, and Northwestern than do parents and students on undergraduate student tuition. At OpenTheBooks.com, we did an audit over the course of the past 5 years, and incredibly, these colleges are more federal contractor than they are educator. They collect more on federal contracts and grants than they do on undergraduate student tuition. For example, at Columbia, over the course of the last 5 years, they've collected a stunning amount of money from taxpayers, nearly $6 billion.
And these schools also have massive endowments, Adam, and these funds get big-time tax breaks. How much have these endowments grown recently?
Well, look, these elite schools, they've got nearly all the money in the world. You take the 8 schools of the Ivy League, you add Northwestern and Stanford, and they have endowments of $240 billion. That's nearly $250 billion that they've accumulated. And look, over the course of the past 5 years, those endowments at those 10 schools have risen by a stunning $65 billion. So, Jan, they took $33 billion from taxpayers on federal contracts and grants, while their endowment during that 5-year period increased by $65 billion. Wow. You got Columbia, for example. They took nearly $6 billion during that period, and their endowment grew from $10 billion to $13 billion. Harvard took nearly $4 billion. They've got a $51 billion endowment. And Yale, they took $3.5 billion from taxpayers, and their endowment is $41 billion.
And your team at OpenTheBooks.com audited the federal grants received by these schools, Adam. So what are some of the frivolous, wacky, or some of the wasteful grants that you guys found?
You know, last year, Columbia took $3.5 million to decolonize the earth sciences. They think it's the earth sciences, that's like biology, the atmosphere, the geosciences. They think it's too white and too Western, so they want to take it woke for $3.5 million of your money. Jan, probably the wackiest grant we've ever come across at the Ivy League was at Cornell a number of years ago. They took $1 million on a study where it hurts the most to be stung by a bee, and it turns out it's the nostril. But I want to point out that 5 schools out of the 8 schools of the Ivy League on COVID pandemic aid, they actually didn't return over $220 million, including Columbia, who cashed COVID aid checks of $70 million while they've got this $13 billion endowment.
My goodness. You know, there are some, Adam, who will say that these universities should not be held responsible for the disruptive behaviors of their student body. What do you say to that?
Look, these are aggressive acts of anti-Semitism. And when these protesters violate university law, they need to go through due process and face expulsion. Look, when you call on the police to round up a tent camp, an encampment on your campus, violating university rules, violating local and city rules, and those protesters are arrested, they need to face prosecution. Look, these protesters are so aggressive that they're calling for the destruction of Israel, the genocide of the Jewish people, and that has no place on university campuses. And make no mistake, any federal money, any taxpayer money following bigotry, anti-Semitism, and discrimination, that needs to be cut.
And Adam, there's multiple bills in Congress that would tax these elite universities. What should Congress do?
Well, Congress needs to hold hearing right now on the tax status, the IRS tax status of these elite universities. Jan, they're organized as public charities, and so that needs to happen in Congress. The second thing that needs to happen, and there's bills introduced right now on legislation like J.D. Vance, The tax on excessive endowments, these massive endowments, are only taxed at 1.4%. And I think everyone will find that grossly unfair when the wealthiest of individuals pay 35%. So there's legislation introduced on that issue to tax the university and claw back some of our taxpayer money.
Founder and CEO of OpenTheBooks.com, Adam Andrzejewski. Have a great weekend. Thanks for joining us here, and we appreciate it.